Welcome back to A.M.B. Garage. Today I'll be discussing a little bit about fuel for your motorized bike, what kind of oil you use, the break-in procedure, and the specific octane rating for your fuel. So first off, lubrication. Now, from my experience on Reddit, Facebook, YouTube, the majority of people don't use the correct premix oil. There are four main types of oil. There's crude oil, marine oil, which is like a mineral oil. There's semi-synthetic and full synthetic oil. Now, a lot of people nowadays, there's not a lot of products that use crude oil. Marine oil is basically exclusively for like sea-doos, jet skis, boat engines, stuff like that. And then there's semi-synthetic and full synthetic, which are higher end oils. The premix oil typically sold at Lowe's, Home Depot, the SuperTech oil at Walmart, those are all mineral oils, and you really don't want to be using that for your motorized bike. They don't lubricate as much, they cause more carbon buildup, and overall just not a great oil. Top of the line full synthetic oil, such as what I have here, is by far the best. It really helps the engine prevent wear. It burns easier, and it also cleans the engine when it burns. So if you guys don't know, unlike regular motor oil that resists burning and just solely lubricates on premix oil, it lubricates as it burns. It's meant to burn. It goes through the crankcase, through the cylinder, up into the combustion chamber, and then the lubricity of it really only lasts 1 to 2 strokes before it just burns off and gets replaced with the whatever lubricant the next fuel charge supplies to it. And the stuff that you buy at Walmart or whatever, it doesn't burn very well. It's not full synthetic. It fouls up spark plugs, clogs carburetors, it causes a bunch of carbon buildup, causes more wear and tear on the engine. So all that stuff, I definitely recommend full synthetic oil. As far as semi-synthetic and full synthetic on a motorized bike, I don't think there is much of a difference in terms of how they perform. I've always gone full synthetic because here in the States, there's a difference of like $2 between full and semi-synthetic. So I just get this stuff. It's like $50 per gallon, which isn't that bad. Now concerning premix ratios for your oil, I recommend, and other more experienced builders, a lot more experienced builders like Smolik Performance, etc., they recommend 40-to-1 ratio, cradle to grave. Now this is a great time to discuss the break-in period of your engine. A lot of people think that the break-in period of an engine is a myth. Other people think that you have to be super strict to it. If you don't know what a break-in period is, basically it's the first time you drive your engine, you run it, and you take it pretty easy. You don't go above 3/4 throttle, and you don't burn the heck out of it to where it almost overheats. So you get 1, maybe 2 easy heat cycles into it, and this allows it to run at a moderate temperature to bed in the all the high spots of the piston rings to make sure everything is moving properly, all the bearings are broken in properly, and to make sure that the piston rings in the cylinder and the piston all squeeze together and seal properly. Now, if you do not perform a break-in period and you just full throttle the engine right out of the gate, since the pistons are not seated properly with the walls of the cylinder and the piston, they kind of just bounce around in there. That can cause scoring. That can also damage things and cause excess wear. And it can also glaze the cylinder walls, which basically make the cylinder walls super slippery, which results in the piston rings not sealing properly, which doesn't allow the oil to lubricate properly, and you get a lot of blow-by, which is compression leaking through the piston rings into the bottom end, and your engine runs like garbage. So you really don't want that. Now, to the people saying that break-in period is a myth, yes and no. The little pamphlet owner's manual that you get for most of these Chinese kits, they recommend like a 500 kilometer break-in period. That's hot garbage. A proper break-in period should last around half a gallon, and you really don't want to go any more than 3/4 throttle, and you really don't want to ride for a long time. You just want to get the engine up to temperature. You don't want to heat soak the engine, and after it gets up to temperature, you want to shut it off, let it rest. Now, some people recommend decreasing, which means leaning out the premix ratio when you're breaking in your engine, or reverting to the worse engine oils so you get more friction when you're breaking in the engine. And I honestly don't know the science behind that, if there is any. You do want friction when you're breaking in your engine, but you don't want to have too much friction. We're not honing out the cylinder. We're just grinding off the tiny little imperfections on the piston rings so it can fit properly. Now, this isn't a super big issue, that's why I'm putting it at the back of the list, but I still see a lot of people overhyping this, and that is fuel grade. Now, here in the States where I live, there's three main types of fuel. There's 87, 91, and 93. 87 has an octane rating of 87 with an ethanol percentage of around 10%. 91 octane has 91 octane and 0 ethanol usually. And then 93 typically has like 3 to 7% ethanol with a 93 octane rating. And so basically all that ethanol does is make the gasoline burn cleaner, and octane, it resists ignition. And so a lot of people think, oh, ethanol in your fuel, oh, that's a no-no. That's going to blow my engine up. It's not a super big deal. The only real issue with ethanol is that it kind of separates from the gasoline after a while, and it also absorbs water. But this is after like months of time. Now, octane is very important, especially on high temperature engines, high compression engines. But the thing is, these little engines are designed for 87 octane. So they don't have the temperature, the RPM, or the compression to use high octane fuel. The only thing you're doing when you're going from 87 to 91 or 93 is just burning money. The only time you will ever need higher octane fuel is when you get pre-ignition, which is when the temperature of the engine, the temperature of the spark plug typically is enough to ignite the gasoline, the fuel charge, before it actually sends a spark to it. And so typically this is when you have super high compression, super high RPM. You're screaming 12,000 RPM like Trent Bikes does on his Minarelli. Like, then you would see pre-ignition. And even then, if you have a decent ignition system, you might not. So if you have a stock bike that you're having that issue with pre-ignition, it'll sound like a tinging or like misfiring. If you have that issue, it's most likely not because, oh, the fuel has ethanol, the fuel is 87 octane. It's typically because something's messed up with your ignition system, or you have an air leak, or your carburetor isn't tuned properly. You might just get as much pre-ignition from 93 octane as you will 87. Now, on performance engines that have a tight squish gap, higher compression, they're revving 12,000 RPMs, they're breaking 5, 8 horsepower, you'll want a 93 octane fuel. 87 at that point, if it works, it works, but you'll probably be running at its limits. Stuff like the Menace 85, even the Avenger 85, hybrid engines. Pre-ignition is pretty detrimental, especially to those high-strung engines, so to probably want 93 octane. However, as I mentioned before, these stock engines really does not matter. If I can get away running 87 octane on my truck or my Predator 212 engine, you're not going to need it on a 1.5 horsepower weed whacker engine, basically. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this little rant found its way into somebody that could use some tidbit of information. Have a great day.